And recording. Got it. All right. Again, hello, everybody. Welcome to our event this evening. Really, it's an honor to have our honored guest, Cynthia, with us. We'll be discussing different topics about life with her hearing dog, what that was like, what that looked like for her. Also, before we do that, I'm going to let her just go ahead and introduce herself.
Okay. Hi, I am so happy to be here this evening. And in particular, especially as it relates to all the fabulous families that are working in conjunction with their children that are working with hearing loss. So I know that whenever I was growing up, my family did very much of the same. And I love whenever I see participation and parents that want to learn and understand and know what they can do for their children. Today's world is just an abundance of opportunity, and it's an honor to be here. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I was born with a hearing loss. It's called a cookie bite. And under normal circumstances, that cookie bite does not even begin to materialize until like your 30s, 40s, or 50s. And the cookie bite hits the mid-range. And I'm sure a lot of you here are very familiar with audiograms. But with the audiogram, you have the low, the medium, and the high. And with a cookie bite, what happens is it's a U shape in an audiogram. So all of the mid-range disappears. And mid-range is where the majority of communication is. In my case, there was, which we didn't know until years later, there were 2 different chromosomes in my DNA, not just one for the cookie bite, but an alternate one. So my hearing loss started a lot earlier. I was in 3rd grade. And they did the test at school, and then they called my parents and they thought something was wrong with the test because I was a good student. Well, the reason I was probably doing so well is I was sitting in the front of the class because I couldn't see either. And so I was learning to lip read and didn't even know it. And so I was doing well in school. They thought because of that I could not have a disability. Later, I was at home with family and my mother, she turned around, she asked me to do something. I didn't hear it. She sent me to my room. She said I was being defiant. I came back down later and she said, "Did you hear me?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, we're going to go to the audiologist and you better have a hearing loss." And sure enough, I did. So when we went to the audiologist, he was clarifying at that time that I was adapting well. My hearing loss was not bad at that point, but it was going to continue to progress. And so I was able to mainstream through school. I was able to stay in public school all the way through high school and go to college later. But the complexity behind the hearing loss continued to grow. Back in my day, hearing aids were not designed for mid-range loss. So they knew about my loss, but there was nothing they could give me. My hearing loss continued to diminish. And in high school, my mid-range was around 60. I was still able to do advanced placement classes. I was able to play sports. I was able to do a lot of things, but it wasn't without a lot of challenges along the way. And then I was able to go to college and I completed college. And then later I went on to grad school. Today I am a very happy recipient of a cochlear implant. I got the cochlear implant in 2019. And it has opened up a wealth of opportunity for me. So I'm very grateful for that. So the technology is kept up. And every time I would hit a point of where we're getting a little concerned, what am I going to do? How can I stay mainstreamed? and something else would come along that would make a difference in relation to technology. So I was not aware of, at the time I was in high school or middle school or college, or even when I got my MBA, I was not aware of assistance that would work for, I knew about assistance for the deaf, but I was not officially deaf until 21 years of age. So I didn't have CART, I didn't have an interpreter, I didn't know sign language. I had nothing like that that was available. Today, what I love is sign language is a magnificent language that I greatly admire and I'm continuing to learn. It's a fabulous way to communicate, as even with the hearing people, if they get engaged with it. The technology today is really making a difference and opportunity, but the bottom line is that each one of us is very unique. So whenever you come to a workshop like you are here tonight, and you are observing what someone else does, or I share my story, you need to remember that's for that person. So when you're looking at your children, and if they're dealing with hearing loss, you're going to want to personalize that experience for your child. And as we all know, one child will differ dramatically from another. So I'm very excited about sharing my story, experiences, and talking, and yet at the same time totally understanding that everything that I share is not necessarily applicable in your situation. And communication is really about whatever works. Some people, I have a dear friend that she has tried for years and years and years to learn sign language. And she's a hearing person, very dear friend, helped me with my children when they were growing up. And to this day, her fingers, she has arthritis very bad. She cannot sign. It's very hard for her. And if you try to read her signing, it's extremely difficult. What I love about it is she laughs about it. I laugh about it. She goes out in the hearing world. She can still roller skate. She's an older woman, and she works with children, hearing children, and she's teaching them individual little words, a little bit of sign here and there, and talks with them and has them so intrigued with it. And the passion that she has, that she wants to be immersed in my world and my ability to communicate. It doesn't matter if she can do it right. It's just that she's trying, and that passion is what it's all about. So it's not about embarrassment. It's not about, am I doing it the right way? It's a matter of trial and error and finding what works best. In my personal situation, I went through, hearing aids came out when I was in high school. They were limited on what they could do for me, but they did enhance the ability to hear. I went on to college. I was at Indiana University, and then I was in classrooms with 450 students to a classroom, and my hearing loss was just bottoming out, and that was it. So I came back home. They did testing, and they found out that I had the cookie bite loss, and the technology was limited. I transitioned to a different college at home with smaller classes. And I was still able to graduate in 4 years, even though I lost a semester in several of my classes. And then I was able to work in between that, and I went on to work after that. I got married, I had children, and then I finally reached the point where my hearing loss was, even with both hearing aids in, I was hearing about 20%, and it was all lip reading. And my audiologist reached out to me and she said, I really want you to look at a hearing dog. And at the time, I really had a hard time understanding that. I was like, why do I need a hearing dog? I'm adapting, I'm doing what I can. And she said, I'm watching you. You're a very social person. You love interacting with a lot of people. And I am slowly seeing you withdraw. And she said, I want other people to be aware. She said, you're very effective with your communication and you don't have the appearance, whatever that is, of having a hearing loss or being late deafened. And you need to make it visible to the people around you because they have no idea how bad your hearing is. So about 2 years later, I was at a meeting and there was a friend of mine that had a hearing dog from Canine Companions for Independence, which is now just Canine Companions. And I was able to interact with the dog. And I realized, I probably need to look into this. So I signed up. I went through several levels of the application process. And then they came back and I had to go through several interviews and we had to make sure there was compatibility between me wanting a dog and my ability to work with a working dog and what they had to offer. So long story short, I was accepted. And then I had to go through 2 weeks of training. So they put you in a class and then you go to their campus where you're going through 2 weeks of training with the hearing dog. And you need to understand the dog is already trained. It's the person that needs to understand how to handle and work with a working dog. Even up to the point when I showed up in that classroom and had the 2 weeks of having to go through that training, I still was not 100% sure why. I felt like other people would benefit more so than I would. I felt like I could continue to do what I needed to do. And I think the bottom line thing is I worked so hard all those years to be independent and to not look like I had a disability, and the dog was going to make it visible. So when I was going through the class, come to find out, most everybody in that class had the same thoughts. And then we were also thinking someone else will benefit more than I would. I want to give the dog to someone else that really needs it more so than I do. And the irony is I needed that dog a lot more so than I realized. So we wrapped up the 2 weeks of training. It was a lot to learn, a lot to process, a lot to go through. And I was able to go back home. And of course, it continues on from there. It's not like you go home and you're done. You have a lot to do once you get back home. But all of a sudden, I realized that dog was bridging the gap. So it's like I would walk into a room without the dog and I would say I had a hearing loss. And someone might say, okay, well, they very quickly forget. And then they go back to their communication in the way they like to communicate, which is turning their head away, turning around, not being present and with you. And when I had the dog, it was all of a sudden this, well, most of the time what I got asked was as if I was training the dog for somebody else because people didn't know about a hearing loss dog. So they would say, oh, well, are you training that dog or what's the, and they wanted to talk. And that gave me the opportunity to share about my own hearing loss, to educate a hearing person about it, and to let them see how a working dog interacts because my working dog, her name is LaRue the second, if you want to be official about it. She was a saving grace. And I had more people, my family, my friends, my coworkers, that they were absolutely shocked. Once I had that hearing dog, they're like, you really have a hearing loss. And I'm like, yeah, I do. But it made it so transparent and it kept it where it was like, it was the constant reminder of like, okay, she really can't hear and she really needs to lip read. I really need to face her. I really need to do what I can. Now, I will share that having a working dog does not go without its faults. When you go out in public with a working dog, there are people that will challenge that. There are people that are going to say you don't really have a disability. Why do you have that dog? Where did you get that vest? I want that vest so I can take my dog anywhere I want to go. That gets asked a lot. I had a situation of being at Walmart. I was shopping and a young gentleman came up and he was with his girlfriend and he took meat that he had in his hand and he put it in front of my dog. And the people that were all around me, all of a sudden, like they came in, they were like right away wanting to know what they could do to be of help. And I said, you don't have anything to worry about. Look at that gentleman and the girlfriend. She's upset. He is going to be a very lonely man tonight. So at any rate, I had another opportunity to share because LaRue was trained for that stuff. So she didn't miss a beat. Having food or meat or anything in front of her, she's not going to react to that. She stays in work mode. So with the dogs from Canine Companions, what they do is those dogs are very specifically trained to alert you to sounds. So in my case, it would be like, all right, if the phone rings and I need to go to my cart phone, she's going to alert me. I'm going to say, yes, what? And then she is going to take me to the sound. If it's the phone, if it's the door, if it's a person that's calling my name, whatever it might be, she's going to take me to that. And I can remember when I first came back home, because I have 2 kids and they were young at the time when I first got my hearing dog. And my younger one used to get sick a lot. And I used to sleep outside his door because I didn't want him to come find me. I wanted to be right there because I couldn't hear. And I came home with LaRue and my younger son got sick again. And I said, don't worry. I said, I'll still get teary-eyed today. My kid's now a Marine. This is my Marine, that he's an older gentleman now. At any rate, I told him, you go to sleep. If you need me, you call my name. And I said, my hearing dog's going to come wake me up. And my hearing dog will take me to you. And he started crying. And I didn't realize until that time how my family was also impacted in relation to my own hearing loss and how important all of that was. So it was a great learning experience for all of us. And the hearing dog is definitely worth its weight in gold. It makes a difference with the family. It makes a difference in the workforce. It makes a difference in the general public. And again, it is not without a lot of work along the way. It's not like you have this device or this animal that's all of a sudden going to make your world okay. It takes patience. It takes work. It takes consistency. It takes following the rules that you've been given. And sometimes that's hard. My own family had their issues where they wanted the dog to just be a play puppy. And I'm like, it's a working dog. But you need to understand also that does not mean the dog is in work mode at all times. That dog is playing, having fun, out in the world, embracing it all. But dogs that go all the way through the process, especially with canine companions. With canine companions, they have volunteers that have breeder dogs. So they will breed the dogs. The dog then goes to puppy raising volunteers. Those volunteers work with the dogs, teach them different commands, take them to puppy raising classes, and help them develop into potentially becoming a working dog. They then, at about 14 months, go back to canine companions where they're working with the official trainers. And that's where they breed out the ones that will go on and continue to work and those that will not. So a working dog loves what they do. They love it. And even my dog, I have to say now, is now just recently retired. Still active as ever, but recently retired. And her highlight of her day is to still alert me to sounds. And so there's an awful lot to be said for the working dog. So there's people that will ask and say, well, is it fair to the dog? Well, if the dog is not destined to be a working dog, they won't filter through the program. They'll move on. They'll be a retired dog. They'll be a non-working dog. They'll do whatever they need to do. But what you do find, like with a hearing dog, unlike like a service dog for physical disability, a hearing dog needs a lot of energy because someone with hearing loss is not necessarily physically limited. So they're an active, energetic individual out there in that world. And that dog needs to be ready to go. The dog is also trained like Guru. If I tell her like down or stay, or she's looking at me like right now, am I supposed to do this right now? And so at any rate, but they are trained even when they're in a laid position, like if you say down, their body is condensed as possible so that they are protected. So someone won't trip over them or do something, and they're protected. The dog is trained where you can step over them and they will not move. The dog is trained not to go after food. You can go in public settings and you do not have to worry about the dog going after food. Part of our training was having to go through a buffet. So we had the dog, we had the tray, we had the plate, we had the everything, and we had to go through all of that. And so the dog is really, the hearing dog is very conditioned to know how to behave in public. They do not get eye contact. They're not looking around and looking up. A good working dog is not going to get eye contact with you because why? You want to pet the dog. You want to interact with the dog. The way to keep that dog away from, it doesn't prevent it. It happens to me a lot. If I'm out in public with LaRue, people will come up from behind and they'll hug her, or they start telling me what to feed her, or they start telling me what treat she should have, or what vet she should go see, or I mean, it comes with the territory. So it does, again, it does require patience. The difference, going back to service dog, like physical disability, and a hearing dog, the big difference is with a service dog, you're telling the dog what to do. I want you to open the door. I want you to pick up my keys. I want you to get something out of the refrigerator. I want you to help me. My wheelchair is stuck, whatever it is. But you are telling the dog what to do. With a hearing dog, that dog has to know what you need. So that dog has to know, I can't tell her, if I can tell her to tell me the phone's ringing, I don't need her. So, because that means I can hear. So she has to know to alert me to the smoke alarm, to a phone ringing, to someone calling my name, to someone at the door, to anything that makes her uncomfortable, to me dropping something that I'm not aware of. My keys fall out of my pocket. I don't know that. I don't hear it. The dog does. The dog can alert me and the dog can go after the keys. To toasting something in the toaster oven, or let's say you want to boil some eggs, you forget that they're on the stove, that the dog will be able to alert you to those different sounds and make you safe and make you comfortable. And then additionally, while in public, to act like a true working dog and to be there for you. If you ever see a dog that's on an extended lead, you know right away they're not a working dog, because the dog has to be in close enough proximity to you to feel what you need, to know what you need. So if you see an extended lead, and that happens a lot, especially at the airport, places like that, and you find dogs that are not true working dogs, the best thing in the world you can do is to have a true working dog and show people how it actually works. So At any rate, that kind of summarizes a little bit about my background with my hearing loss and about working dogs. I did not elaborate on the work side of my situation, but I thought I would stop at this point and let some questions develop, or if there's something else that we want to discuss, and kind of go from there.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing so far. I've really learned a lot, and it feels like it's only been a short couple minutes, but I know that my family, one of the things that we're kind of sick about is that we'll forget that the faucet is on. We'll turn it on and I'll walk away and the water's still running. And then, maybe it could be up to an hour. I don't even know how long later we see, oh, the water's still running. So we like having a hearing dog for that kind of situation would be perfect. So yeah, wonderful. I was curious, maybe can we see LaRue? Is she near you?
Oh, yes, she is. Come here, LaRue. Come on. Come on up here. Come on over here. You can come. Come on. Come on. Up here. Just go ahead and ask a different question, and then I'll get her because she's looking at me like, yeah, right. So come here, LaRue.
No problem.
Come on. There you go. Come on. It's okay.
So,
All right. So another question that you might have, and then I'll get her right.
okay, sure. So just one question that I wanted to ask before I open the floor for all the families and guests. Based on your opinion and your perspective, what do you think is a good age to get a hearing dog? So, because most people, at least here today, have children who are between the ages of an infant to about 5 or 6, 7-ish. I know I've had conversations with families that aren't exactly sure if they should go ahead and start the process for getting a hearing dog now or wait till later until they're a bit older, more responsible. So that's something.
Right. Well, as I
has
shared,
asked
hi,
me a
sweetheart.
lot.
Come on over here. You want to come up here and say hi? Come
And
on.
I'm not sure how to answer sometimes.
Come on up. Come on up. Come on. Yay. Come on. You can do it. All right, baby girl. Good girl. All right. This is LaRue. She's older. She's my puppy. Yeah. I know, baby girl. I know. So yeah.
That's
And,
perfect.
yeah, she's older now. So like in the last 6 months, and now her tail's wagging, and she's like, oh, can I come play? I want to talk. I want to tell you guys all about my life. So what a good girl. She knows sign. She knows a lot of sign. So I could talk with her if I did presentations or I was working with her, and we could have 500 people in a room, and she would know. I could talk with her. I could let someone else kind of like actually interact with her, and I could talk with her just by signing. She's really good. A lot of dogs are very good with sign language, very good with it. Dogs really like it, just like children do. Children really like sign language. Is like an opener. It actually can make it easier for communication with younger children and with animals. It can make a big difference. So, but to answer your question in relation to a working dog, like a hearing dog, there are strays a lot of times are very good at picking up on what's needed, and they can work from home. They're probably not good for out in public, but they are good for like at home to help. I had a stray several years prior to LaRue that she automatically started picking up on the fact, wait a minute, sometimes if someone knocked on the door, I would go to it, and sometimes I didn't. And the dog got to the point where she would just sit between me and the sound. So, but to answer your question, as far as dealing with a working dog, my recommendation would be at least middle or high school. I would not recommend younger than that, simply because of the work involved. That, again, though, could be very dependent upon the individual child. So if you're looking at just a dog that can assist from home, that's one thing. If you're looking at being out in public, you want to make certain that the individual is capable of managing the dog, of controlling, of being aware of the surroundings and helping to protect the dog, and dealing with the public situations that I've mentioned to date. Because the one thing you do need to remember is, I like to use the analogy of, I have a working dog. And so people feel like they're entitled to come up and pet, touch. I can have a patch that says, don't touch, working, whatever. They will still come up. They will still touch. They will still want to talk. They will still want to, and you have to be prepared to deal with that. So, so that's what comes into play with children. But I definitely think that it is something that should be taken into account to look at when the time is right.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I liked your response. So now I guess I'll go ahead and open up the floor to our family members who have any questions for you. Again, just a reminder for everybody that anyone's here just because of your profession or your student or members of the community, go ahead and hold your question. So we allow the families to first ask theirs, and then we'll open the floor to everybody else.
Okay.
Any families that have questions, or you're welcome to put it in the chat as well, and I can sign them. You can open your cameras up, you can use sign, voice, your choice. Everyone's thinking, processing. Hey there. Yeah, one moment. Okay, go ahead, Toby.
Hey, that's Toby. I just want to say our son Landon has cookie bite hearing loss as well, and he's 2. And I thought it was cool to hear your history and your story being identified. Here he is right here, being identified
Hello.
at 3. Thank you for sharing as well about your journey with a dog.
At home right now, but we are.
Landon's telling you that we're at home right now. With your experience with the your experience in the environment, how does the dog play like into like where you work at and integrating into like college? Like I'm thinking long term, like for Landon, and navigating college and streets and that kind of stuff. Does that help you, like alert you to like the sounds in the street to walk across the street? And also like dormitory, like where, like could you bring them to dorms and all that stuff?
I think that absolutely, that the dog can make a really big difference in that. And I think it's awesome that you are here. Again, I just love whenever I see parents that are working so proactively with their children, and what a beautiful child. At any rate, so with the cookie bite, definitely that creates a very unique situation. And my empathy goes out to you with that. It's definitely workable, but it does have a lot of challenges along the way. And when it comes to college or like having a hearing dog, what you will find is, and what I highly recommend is, even if you are not yet ready for a working dog, get immersed in that culture. Go ahead and talk with puppy raisers, talk with people that work with hearing dogs around the country. Like Canine Companions has chapters all throughout the country. You can probably find one that's in close proximity so that your child can get immersed in that early on. And then that opens up a lot more opportunity to where your child might be ready for it by high school or might be ready for it for college. The dog, again, will be very well trained to handle anything. The complexity in college could be the environment where you really need to pay attention that you don't find other students that might want to test the dog with things they shouldn't. So it's a very vulnerable age. It's like they're out exploring, they're on their own, they're doing things that are different. A lot of times there's alcohol and different things that come into play, and you can find the dog could all of a sudden be in a very unusual situation. So again, I love that you are thinking that far ahead, but I think if you have your children immersed and being exposed to sign language, being exposed to hearing dogs, being exposed to everything early on, they can participate. They can also get involved in puppy raising early on. They can do that very early on. And that can solidify how well your child, your own child, because it differs for each one, that how your child is going to interact with a working dog and at what age it would be most appropriate, and how that will come into play, especially with college. And by that time, I think a lot of things will probably be a little different too. So I've watched from when I was in college to where we're at now, and then looking forward, that I think there's going to be just an overwhelming opportunity for kids that are just getting started now. By the time they hit college or moving ahead, there's going to be an abundance of opportunity that's going to make their life a lot easier than it has been in the past.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you, Toby, for the question. All right, I do see another question in the chat here. This is from Angie. She says, hello, am I right in thinking that part of the acceptance process is ability to cover vet costs? If not, is there any help with vet costs from any organization?
There's no vet cost that assistance that I'm aware of. I know with canine companions, the average cost for a working dog is about $40,000 to $50,000, and that dog is free to people in need. So you would be responsible for the vet cost, but you are getting a dog that has been properly trained, and then you are properly trained on how to work with that dog. There is not an organization that I am aware of at this time that would cover that cost. And also, if you look at a different organization, there are some that they're like, they'll say they want funds up front, and then they're saying, we'll go ahead and we'll be able to train like a stray dog or any kind of dog, and we'll make certain that that dog works for you. There's really no way to know how well that dog is going to work as a working dog, whether it's a service dog for a physical disability or a hearing dog, until the training comes into play. So you want to be really careful. And I would look at Canine Companions has the best, as far as what I've seen to date, the best guidelines for what you look for with a working dog. And that's a dog that is not visible in public. You don't even really know the dog's there. A dog that is not going after food, is not going to go after it. A dog that can be in play mode and very quickly regress back to work mode as needed. A dog that really is in tune with the person they're supposed to be working with, so they can capture if that person is all of a sudden placing themselves in maybe a not okay situation. So it's all of those different things that come into play. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question in the right way. So please feel free to ask additional questions about that.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm thinking if Angie needed more clarification, she can go ahead and let us know. Any other families that have questions before we open the floor to the others, professionals, community members, and so forth? Okay, great. We have about 10 minutes left, so I think I'll go ahead and take the time now to open the floor. To anybody else here, anyone here is welcome to go ahead and say your question.
So good to see you. Can you guys hear me okay? Is my volume good? Okay. Right now, this is the closest thing I have to a dog. My apologies. But Cynthia, I was wondering if you could give folks an idea about the annual cost of having a dog live with you. Although the training is free, there's food, there's shots, there's grooming, maybe collars, all those different various things. So can you give folks an idea about how much the cost is for that?
That would kind of be a difficult question to answer because that varies. It's really more about veterinarian costs, and that varies from one location to the next as far as so you can take and you can actually probably go talk to a veterinarian and you can ask them on what you would expect in the way of annual costs. For me here in Nashville, it's probably going to run around $450 annually, I would say. That's including the annual checkup and all the, any preventive medications or immunizations or whatever is needed. Everything else, they really give you everything up front. They give you the collar. They give you a training collar. They give you the bowls for feeding. They give you the cage. I mean, they literally give you everything you need to start in terms of having a hearing dog. They do an outstanding job, and it's all with volunteers and it's all with fundraising. So Canine Companions does a pretty impressive job. They also have vets that are on site that you can ask questions about. So if there's something that's coming up, or if a dog runs into a unique situation, that they might be able to be of assistance with that. So it can be a case-by-case basis. But I think in light of all that they offer, if that's the cost, and then you've got to look at dog food as well. So your dog food can add up. But those are your two primaries, your veterinarian, your annual veterinarian, and your dog food.
Okay, Briella here. I see John. He has a question. I'm just going to hold you there for just a moment while we see what's going on in the chat here. So one moment before we start, he's asking the question. He said, I was wondering, can you may get a tax write-off for medical expenses? Anything that you pay as far as cost for the dog, can that be a write-off for your taxes? That's the first question I had. And then the other question that I had was, I was wondering, for example, if sometimes you're in a bad mood or something, you're not feeling so great, can they also be an emotional support dog for things like that?
Absolutely.
Can they take on different roles, like help you out when you're in a situation like that?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
And John, that's a really good question. I love what you have to share. And to answer the question on medical, you can look at doing a tax write-off, although the last administration changed that. So the deductible, your deductible has to be a lot higher today than it was in the past. It's actually having an adverse impact on a lot of nonprofits. But today, in the past, prior to 2016, yes, it was beneficial to include any of your costs associated with the dog and write that off. Today, you would probably have a harder time doing that because you've got a lot of deductibles you would have to meet that goes beyond the basic threshold depending on your income. So that answers that question, but you can use it. You can use it. It's just, I'm not sure that you're going to make that threshold where it's going to be beneficial. On the
I see what you're saying. So it's the CPT. You have a cap. CPA. You have to be in,
Right,
in
because of the
communication with
cap
TPN.
that it's like, so, and that cap went up to a certain, and it's really having a very negative impact on a lot of nonprofits, because a lot of people like to make donations, and now they're like, well, it's having a lot of negative ramifications, some positive, some negative. But the second part of your question, which was in relation to the dog, and you were saying like emotional support, I think that's an excellent question. And yes, the dog can actually help with that, because I like to tell everybody, I'm a real advocate
Interesting.
about being optimistic and looking at everything in the way of an opportunity. So you have obstacles that come along the way, but you look at it like an opportunity. That doesn't mean that you don't need your pity pot time. And I set a timer for myself. So when I want my pity pot time and I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I don't feel like dealing with the world, I've got the hearing loss, that I will utilize my pity pot time. I set the timer and I say, I'm on my pity pot. And my dog knows when I'm on my pity pot. and so, and yes, I mean, the dog
Really?
be the emotional support dog as well. One thing I will share about emotional support dogs is strictly emotional support dogs, they are not allowed in public. They are not actually working dogs, and they are not allowed in public. So if someone has an emotional support dog, they're not actually legally allowed out in public. But the combined hearing loss or hearing dog and emotional support, yes.
All right, thank you, John, for your question. Now I'm going to flip back over to the chat. There's a question, few questions actually, trying to prioritize. Sorry, one second. So I have one question that is just a clarification question. If a family from Sandra, oh, perfect, sorry. Okay, if a family has their own dog right now, and they're hoping to get it trained as a hearing service dog, will canine companions provide the training free of charge?
Yeah, they do not do that, and they don't do that for a lot of reasons. They breed their own dogs, and they work with labs and golden retrievers, and it's usually a combined of the two, because those breeds are adaptable. In other words, they can be trained by one person and then go with a family, and they can work with that transition. Other breeds like German Shepherds is a good example. They're very loyal. Once they have connected with one person, they typically do not want to transition to another. So Canine Companions works with their own dogs. They go through their own screening process so that by the time you are looking for a dog, they are handing you a working dog. They're handing you a dog that they know is going to be able to act as a hearing dog. As far as training your own, you can definitely do that. You can look at that. You want to make certain that your dog is doing everything that they should. And you want to be careful if you're out in public that that dog is actually acting like a working dog. And again, a great way to see that is to even go to a canine companion class. Go to a puppy raising class, go to a graduate whenever they have their graduations or whatever, or ask to find someone in your local area that has a canine companion dog. And when you see that dog working, it helps you to know the expectation and the level at which you want to see any kind of dog aspire to as a hearing dog.
Perfect.
I see some people I know here. This is awesome. Yeah.
All right, and then we have about 1 minute left. I have one last question. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe there's a simple answer for it or a short answer, but Danielle asks, what is the application process to qualify for a service dog?
Okay, yeah, the application process is, it's typically like a 3-part process. So you submit your application, then you will get an additional application that's going to ask a lot of detailed questions that includes what's your daily routine, what happens in an average day in your family, and if you're working or whatever, and all those different aspects. Do you have any other dogs at home? Because the working dogs, they can work with other family dogs at home, but they want to know about all the dynamics. Do you have a fenced backyard? What kind of house? What are you willing to do in terms of the training that you need as a person to have a working dog? So it asks all those questions. So you go through that, then that's submitted. And if it moves on to the next phase, then they will call and they will ask to do like an interview. So they can do virtual interview, they can do cart interview, they can do maybe face-to-face, depending on where you live. So they can do the interview, and that goes through the next stage of saying, okay, it looks like we're moving forward. And then it would go to the acceptance phase. And once you are accepted, then you're on a waiting list, and then they will notify you when they have a class available for you to actually participate. One of the interesting things is people will say, well, I don't want to wait for all of that. I want to, sorry about that. There you go. I want to go ahead and train my own dog. Well, any kind of training that you do is going to take a lot of time. So whether you are getting a dog that's already been trained or you're training yourself, you've got to understand and respect that it just takes a lot of time. It's going to take time with all of it. So I love seeing that everybody was here. I definitely want to say that if anybody has more questions, or you want to talk again about it, or you want to have more time, that the door is always open, or email or whatever, and I'm happy to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I see some dogs. Yeah, I just want to respect everyone's time. To keep it short, I'm sorry, you have another question? So I'm training my dog right now, and it's going pretty well. Helping me with the doorbell, some other responding to other sounds that I'm experiencing in my day-to-day life. And they also help me for the tax returns. If you report dog food and a couple more items, I believe it helps a lot for me with money in that way. So that's all. Thank you.
And I want to say we have a Nashville Canine Companions chapter. So if you guys want to, I don't know where everyone lives here. I know quite a few of you. I've seen some people that I know, but there's the other. That if you guys want to be able to meet face to face, if you want to try and set something up like that, we'll be happy to do that. And then we can have working dogs, retired dogs, and dogs in training where you would have a chance to interact with them. We'd be more than happy to do that if you guys want to try and set up something like that.
Wonderful. I just posted the website link to the Canine Companions in the chat. So any families, anyone here, if you're curious and interested in learning more, you can go ahead and click on that link. And always you can reach out to Cynthia, ask more questions to learn some more information. So we're past our time limit, so I'm going to wrap up. I just want to thank everyone again for showing up tonight. And I really want to thank Cynthia for being able to share her story and her journey with her dog. So thank you to our 2 interpreters. Awesome job. And you guys are welcome to open up your cameras and say goodbye. So have a good night.